Best league out with his team.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Play it out. The winner gets $5,000. No entry fee though. The $5,000 is of your money. You just get. So if you win,
pretty good league to be in.
if you you like that, right?
Yeah,
You like that.
yeah.
You with that?
3-1 vote.
If you win, you gotta pay nothing.
I feel like there's a
Pride.
here.
You get pride.
I feel like this is a bad deal for me. I'm not sure exactly where. Maybe Applebee's will put up the 5K. We love our friends at Applebee's. $5,000 worth of riblets. How about that?
Yeah.
That would be really eating good in the neighborhood.
Oh, boy.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside the money man, Matthew Berry, and Jay Croucher. $5,000 contest. I've heard rumors there could be something in the works.
Who are these rumors from? Are they from
got given away
Lawrence?
sources.
Are they,
Yes.
Are these rumors from Lawrence? Lawrence telling you right after the show. Well, listen.
Did you sleep on it?
Yeah, I thought about it. And I talked to my wife. I said, "Honey, I got a great idea. Could we take $5,000 of our money, and then we could just donate it to this league? And the best thing that could happen is I get it back. There's no interest, nothing at all.
You actually would somehow still lose. This is from John Supowitz.
Yeah.
Remember Win Ben Stein's money?
Yes.
Will Matthew Berry's money?
I think that's not Ben Stein from the game show Win Ben Stein's Money. That is a clip, I want to say, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. There you go. Look at that. Look at me.
So instead of Win Ben Stein's money, win Matthew Berry's
money.
But the plot twist is Matthew Berry has a chance to win his own money.
That's very exciting.
Which is a pretty sweet deal for you.
Yeah, it's really, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yes.
It's like a charitable donation to a really worthy cause, except you have the chance to get back the charitable donation, which you rarely do when you donate to a charity.
You guys only, if you're going to do this, why not ask for more than $5,000? Ask for real money.
No. That's a fine. It's a good amount. I don't think there was enough commentary yesterday on Lawrence's new look for the season. Every other appearance on the show, he's been wearing an Oakland Athletics hat or an LA Dodgers hat or an Atlanta Braves hat. I had no idea he had hair or a scalp or these types of things. Wearing a FootJoy polo. Very big year coming up for Lawrence.
Yeah, we'll see.
New makeover.
Well, exactly. Well, by the way, and when he wins the $5,000, just imagine the kind of wardrobe he'll get.
Exactly right.
He'll get 365 days worth of Oakland A's hats.
Yeah.
All right, Atlanta Braves hats.
He would spend it that way. We got a busy day. We're going to go through all of Berry's wide receiver tiers, but before we do, we will open the show with our player news of the day. One that could have been very scary.
Our Rotoworld Player news.
Rotoworld Player news.
You got to brand it.
You want me to beef it up?
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Be a company man.
I'm working on it.
Rotoworld.com, NBCSports.com, free fantasy player news.
I've only worked with you for a year, so I'm still working on my company man aspect.
I'm just saying, if you want somebody to pony up the 5K, that's what you're doing is you say, hey, Rotoworld. Hey, hey, Darren. Hey, why don't you dip into that marketing budget? Why don't you throw some love our way? And
come on, Darren.
Maybe it's the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft.
We have a sponsor.
Rotoworld League, right? Maybe it's the Applebee's League. You know what I mean? Just again, you got to think hey, Applebee's. We already give you some love. We love you. The show is served by Applebee's. But hey, would you like a little bit more love?
I'm a big fan of these new kind of ability to claw back your own money from a donation.
Yeah.
This is new. If it's Applebee's, there should be an Applebee's representative who has a chance to win back the money for Applebee's.
What if we do a GoFundMe?
Yeah,
let's see if maybe the fans would like to donate the $5,000.
Hugely.
I'm sure they couldn't think of something they'd rather do.
Important cause.
Look, in all seriousness, I know you think we could do a Fantasy Life contest, fantasylife.com. I'll talk to my investors. I'll be like, hey, I know you just invested a bunch of money in us. Can we take $5,000 of that for this dumb league? That was a mock draft.
Please, Joe Burrow. Fund our league.
Yeah, exactly, right. But the other thing I would say here is that you never know, right? You never know what could happen. I'm just saying, there's marketing budgets out there, right? That kind of stuff. There's other people. Those people are right. All right. Our producer Steven, who has no chance at the $5,000, is asking us to move along.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown sustained a leg injury during Wednesday's practice. Received treatment from trainers after hurting his lower right leg on the first snap of 7-on-7 drills. Dan Campbell said he expects to get Amon-Ra St. Brown back sometime next week. So good news on this front. The ride or die season is saved right now. Dan Campbell also said the Lions could be looking into the wide receiver market to add a body there because Jameson Williams, who was suspended the first 6 games, he also left practice on Wednesday after grabbing his hamstring.
Yeah, that's a tweet from Tim Twentyman, who covers the team, does a really great job. Remember, Lions training staff drinks free today because, let's be clear, that's my fantasy ride or die.
Yes.
Like, to have my fantasy ride or die go down a week after you announce them is not good.
What's the
it's
protocol?
It's bad for the brand.
What's the protocol? If the ride or die dies before week 1 of the season,
Did you get a redo?
Is there a protocol? Is there a handbook? What do you do?
I don't think you can get a redo. I mean, that's the whole point, is you're riding or dying.
Yeah.
I think you still have to draft him.
Do we play the Hall of Fame game again and get you out to Canton to announce that,
segment, we'll call Sims.
Justin Herbert's your new ride or die?
I would have to have a ruling on that, but I don't think I get another shot at it. I mean, that's the
die.
whole point of a
It's
ride or
over.
die, is that you're all in on that one player. But the fact of the matter is right, so Jameson Williams, a little banged up as well, but Amon-Ra St back. They were busy, the Lions training staff yesterday, saving my fantasy ride or die. So anyway, Lions training staff drinks free today at the happy hour. We love the Lions training staff here. This Jameson Williamson thing is a little bit more interesting to me, guys, because so Campbell said in that tweet from Tim Twentyman that Williams could miss the rest of the preseason. We already know he's going to miss the first 6 games of the year. So now you've got a guy who played, I don't know what it was, less than 20 snaps a game last year.
not much
Very
action.
little, just basically go routes. They just put him in for a very limited package. And now, so you've got a raw player who last year was coming off of a major injury. So he didn't even really, when he was playing, it wasn't until like the second half of the year, and he was playing limited snaps. Now he's going to miss the rest of training camp. He's going to miss the first 6 games of the season. Like, Connor, we love the talent of this kid, and the potential and the idea of him, but also, like, that's tough.
We're inching near scary hours with Jameson Williams' development is what it is. I mean, they traded a lot to go up and get him. Let's not forget that. This was the speed element of their offense, and the fact is...
And a prospect you loved coming out of college, I assume.
Really did like him a lot. And when you look at it, too, I mean, this is someone that he transferred from Ohio State because he couldn't get on the field at Ohio State. And listen, there's a lot of wide receiver talent there. So he played 1 big year at Alabama.
That's why I went to Syracuse. I could not get on the field at Ohio State.
That makes sense.
Turned
Or
out I couldn't get on the
Northwestern,
field.
too,
Or
apparently.
Northwestern.
Yeah.
I couldn't get in the classroom at Northwestern. I couldn't get on the field at Ohio State. I could get into the bars at Syracuse, and that's what ended up working out for me. So God bless.
So
Shout out to Fagans, wherever you are.
Shout out to Fagans.
Yeah, Fagans,
Jameson
44s,
Williams.
Chucks. Yeah.
He caught 1 pass last year, which you think back, because he did play 6 games, and you think, oh, Jameson Williams got involved in the offense. He caught 1 pass.
really
It was
wasn't,
a 41-yard
Yes.
touchdown, which is why I think we remember it. But there is a little bit, and I know he's got more pedigree than these guys, but there's a little bit of kind of Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney. Can you actually get out there on the field, Jameson?
Watch Marvin Jones have just a ridiculous year. Marvin Jones, who is not being drafted at all, but obviously, returning to Detroit is and I mean this in the best possible sense, is a professional wide receiver. Will run his routes, has probably lost his step. Josh Reynolds had some moments last year as well. Former Texas A&M Aggie, Giga Mags, Josh Reynolds. But I honestly, when you look at that list, and now Jameson Williams going to miss the first 6 games, he's going to miss some training camp, it's going to take some time, it makes me feel even better about my fantasy ride or die, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Is a 75% target share out of the question? I don't think it is.
No, I mean, seriously, it's looking that way. I think Marvin Jones might be the oldest receiver in the league right now. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he's up there for the Jays.
He's definitely
all over.
And
he might be a factor on their offense.
Yeah. I don't know why you looked at me when you said oldest receiver in the league.
I held it too.
Connor, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You
The
held
oldest receiver in the league.
And you looked right at me, which is messed up.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of Josh Reynolds in our waiver wire shows throughout the season, because Reynolds is going to be a guy who's you can throw into your flex. He'll get you maybe 8-9 points with no upside. But yeah, it's a little bit of a concern with Jameson Williams, because he's obviously a huge part of the idea of their upside in the second half of the season.
I mean, Khalif Raymond is there, who's a smaller guy, but so he's not kind of an every down guy. But Raymond has had some moments. Denzel Mims.
The revival.
The revival.
Jets gave him away.
Right, I know. So maybe this could be the year of former Jets wide receivers. We got Elijah Moore in Cleveland, now Denzel Mims in Detroit.
That's right.
Maybe these young guys that the Jets had such high hopes for flourish in other.
We might dig out Jeremy
What went
Curley
wrong for
somewhere.
Denzel Mims in New York?
I mean, a lot of it was mental mistakes, penalties. Not really seemed like grasping the offense where they trusted it to put him out there. And honestly, he didn't separate at the next level. It's nice when you run a 4.3 at the combine. When that doesn't translate on the field, it's a problem. Didn't separate.
Sounds a lot
Everything
like
went
Barry
wrong.
at NBC.
I was just going to say,
doesn't separate,
I
mental
can't,
mistakes.
Mental mistakes, no separation.
Can't hit
Plenty of
breaks.
penalties. We throw the flags all the time.
Plenty of penalties. Haven't really taken that next step. You know, there's a very good chance that about in 4 months I'm on Univision. Right? They trade me. You know,
Wow,
Univision just getting
stressed. I don't think Univision will have you. But anyway.
Yeah, that's
by
an
the way,
assumption.
Univision is owned
Detroit.
by NBC Universal, right? Is it?
I believe so. Yeah,
I believe it is.
so.
Okay.
I believe it is.
So is that like going down to the minor leagues in baseball, or
I'm
no?
just for me
For
because I
you.
can't speak. You know, they're like,
yes.
oh, it's Telemundo. Or it might be Telemundo. I apologize. I know that it was okay. It's owned Telemundo. I might be traded off the entire company. The fact of the matter is that I work better in a language that I don't speak.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say,
the point.
To trade you out of the English language.
Take me out of the
platforms.
English language.
Yeah.
I'm much more palatable when
Yeah.
you don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is the point?
Yep.
I
No,
think
that's good.
so.
I like it.
Yeah.
Telemundo, Barry.
Telemundo.
What kind
There
of
you
trade
go.
return will we get for that?
I don't know.
Send you on
But or
Matthew.
maybe, but by the way, maybe it wouldn't be. But maybe it would be still Univision. Maybe it would be another network. Is my point? Because I don't know if you guys know this. This is a true story. That at some point, Al Michaels,
Yes.
the great Al Michaels, was actually traded
not?
from ESPN, Disney, I guess from Disney to NBC Universal to call the Sunday night games, and they got back the rights to Oswald the Rabbit, and it was like this, you know, it was a fun little thing. But legitimately, Al Michaels was actually traded from Disney to NBC. So maybe there's a chance that NBC calls somebody up and says, listen, do you have like a box of old swag?
Yeah.
Like, you know, some sweatshirts from 3 years ago. We'll take that for Barry.
We'll take the box of old swag and a future 14th round pick for Matthew Barry.
Right, or just sometimes you see those NBA contracts where they're just like, or even NFL contracts where they're like, look, we'll pay you to take this guy off of our hands. You know what I mean?
salary
Like,
dump.
A salary dump.
Yes, you are every
As
bit of a
future
salary dump.
considerations. They could literally could say like,
Player to be
listen,
named later.
right, exactly. But by the way, don't be. What if it's Croucher? What if they say like, we will give you Jay Croucher, who's young, under contract for a long time, has a cap-friendly deal. Yeah. What if we give you Jay
Barry's
Croucher
money?
just to take on Barry's bloated, ridiculous contract that literally makes no sense at all with any economics.
Yeah, we got Timothy Mozgov over here.
Yeah.
Lakers trying to move his 4 for 70 deal
Yes.
or whatever.
Nick's legend to you, Jay Croucher.
That's right. That's exactly.
All right, we'll come with more trade
boy.
packages
Treylon
after the show.
That's a great poll.
Yeah.
great
In more
call.
injury
I was trying to
news-
come up with another NBA player. But
Mozgov?
Mozgov's a
right
great
up there.
callback. More injury news on the wide receiver front. Amari revealed a sprained LCL for Treylon Burks, who will be sidelined for a few weeks. Obviously, a scary moment for the Titans in camp when Burks went down, came back up, hobbling around. It sounds like, though, the worst-case scenario was avoided with Treylon Burks right now, and what's expected to be a very big year 2 for him.
Yeah, I mean, look, so, right, but
God.
it's a concern. So, right, because it's a concern for his overall fantasy value for a lot of reasons. I mean, first off, last year he started slow. Remember, of course, he also missed 6 games, the turf toe. He had the concussion as well. Finally came on down towards the end of last year, but we still expect a run-heavy offense in Tennessee. We still expect DeAndre Hopkins to be the leading target share guy on this team, that the passing offense will go through DeAndre Hopkins. And so now again, Treylon Burks, yes, it's the same offense and he's been there, but like he missed a lot of time last year. Now he's going to miss the rest of training camp. He's going to miss a few weeks as they adjust to this new offense, because even though it's the same playbook, guys, like an offense that has DeAndre Hopkins is really different than an offense that does not, especially for a team that didn't pass that much.
Yeah, I'm worried about the Titans in general. We've talked about it a little bit, but their offensive line situation might be the worst in the league. They'd lose Treylon Burks for a period of time. We'll see how long. And their season starts at Saints, home to Chargers, at Cleveland, home to Cincinnati. They're going to be underdogs in all 4 of those games, I would suspect. And then, I don't know, the Ryan Tannehill situation, it could go south for Tennessee.
I mean, it's really interesting. Obviously, they traded up to get Will Levis in the 2nd round. It's weird, though, right? Because they went to go out and get Hopkins. That's their way of saying, like, we're in for this year, right? I mean, you don't make the deal. Like, they're paying Hopkins real money.
Yep.
And so, but you're right. Like, you just listed that, like, would anybody be shocked if the Titans were 0-4?
No.
I mean, like, to your point, right, exactly. The Chargers are going to be really good. The Bengals are going to be really good. The Saints, that'll be a tough game. What was the 4th game that I missed?
So Saints, Chargers, Browns, Bengals. Yep.
Browns
no
are
layups
tough,
there.
too.
There's no layup there.
And that
At
game's in Cleveland, right?
Myles Garrett against maybe the worst offensive line in the league. It's not ideal.
There's
It
no
is
layup in that.
hashtag not ideal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you certainly get nervous about this this Tennessee Titans offense for sure.
And I think coming off the Jameson Williams conversation, a little different, but still with Treylon Burks, this is a guy that coming out of Arkansas, his production was off of screen slants and go balls.
Yep.
So you knew there would be a bit of an adjustment period, but he's a physical freak. That's why you drafted him. Now you look at last year, he had the turf toe and the concussion, and now the sprained ACL. More time off the field is less time developing.
Yeah.
So for Treylon Burks individually in a run-heavy offense, it becomes a little frustrating. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm at wide receiver 45, and I'm probably too high on him. Like, I'm going to do a rankings update. I'm going to wait until this weekend's games and, adjust to that. So there'll be a new rankings update coming out on Monday on NBCSports.com, Rotoworld.com, home of the free $5,000 mock draft. If you just say it enough,
It'll
like
happen.
eventually, I just feel
People
like
believe it.
Well, if they'll
Which isn't
believe
good.
it. They'll believe it, and what I feel like is what will happen is like somebody somewhere will be like, somebody will send an email to somebody in marketing like, are we doing this Barry thing, this $5,000 draft? And somebody else says, I don't know, let me check into it. And then somebody else says, yeah, I don't think so. And then, I don't know, he keeps mentioning it. And then just at some point, there's like this crazy long email string where it's just like, oh, I think we are doing that. You know what I mean?
They
like
keep
if you
talking about it on the show.
You just keep saying it, and somebody's just like, yeah, sure, I guess, whatever, it's $5,000.
It's definitely a thing in corporate America that people just say yes to stop an email thread. You just
Yes.
want to get off the email thread, just say yes.
Yes, it's the comedian Whitney Cummings. Are you guys familiar with Whitney? Very funny. No, she's a very famous
believe you.
comedian.
Believe you.
Whitney Cummings. Anyway, one of her stand-up jokes is, I've never been in jail, but I have been on a text thread.
There you go.
Which I love that joke and is factually correct. By the way, and it's the same as like an email string. Like when you're on like one of the craziest days at ESPN when I was there is that, we have all these at ESPN we had all these global email addresses, and there's literally one global email address that you can, like, it's at, I don't know, I don't want to say the email address, but like you can on air. I don't want to. All my friends are still there, but there is an email address that literally you can email the entire company. Like there's over 7,000 employees at ESPN. There's one specific email address that literally goes to everyone, right? And somebody, some corporate email like, hey guys, it's whatever, it's bring your kids to work day or some kind of generic company-wide email. And then somebody replied back saying, replied like trying to think. I think they were trying to forward it to their boss, saying like, "Hey, do you mind if I bring my daughter?" Whatever, blah blah. And like, but that actually replied all, and so it went to everyone. And so then everyone said like, "You replied all," and so we're like, "Yo, and like there was all of a sudden there were like 40 emails. You replied all, and then other people were like, "Stop hitting reply all. Just stop doing this." And other people were like, "Yeah, take me off the string. You can't take it off the string. It's the global email address. Well, stop emailing back. Yes, you stop emailing back." And it got into this. Literally was a day-long thing that went on. It was like, and you couldn't escape this email thread. Like I think Awful Announcing wrote about it as well. You can Google it. Like the day email stopped at ESPN, and I would have paid way more than $5,000 to get off that email string because like every single, like literally every 10 seconds. Imagine getting an email from every person in your company, and you don't know 95% of them, and they're all annoying. Like, take me off. Hey, stop replying all. You stop replying all. Like.
Now we know how to ransom him for the $5,000 for the league.
Yeah, the all staff button is fraught with peril.
But I've outsmarted the system. I don't read my email.
It's true.
Yeah,
I don't read my email.
That's why he didn't show up for the
can't
show
reply-
the first week.
Yes.
Producer can confirm.
You can't reply all if you never read an email. So
That's working smarter,
workaround.
not harder, right there.
All right, Treylon Burks. The thing with DeAndre Hopkins is his target share.
We're off the rails today.
Yeah.
His target share is just going to go through the roof. One of my favorite stat lines from last year, I think Hopkins' last game of the season against the Bucs, he had 10 targets for 1 reception and 4 yards, which I think there might be, look, he's going to get more than that in Tennessee, but I mean, who else is there now? Nick, Russell Westbrook, Keenan? Like, there's not a lot there behind Hopkins.
Okonkwo.
Yeah, okay.
Learn the name.
Kyle Phillips.
Chig Okonkwo. It's Chiggy time. We're getting Chiggy with it.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Chiggy time.
Yes.
Good.
the most
Very good.
significant injury of the day.
Tannehill is better than the quarter.
Yes,
Tannehill is
yes.
significantly
He will
better
get,
than
I'm not going to say 1
Colt
for 10
McCoy.
targets. But
No,
yeah.
no. And DeAndre Hopkins is, he had a lot of options. He chose specifically to go to Tennessee. I'm sure they have a plan for him. But yes, this is not ideal for the Titans offense. It hurts Tannehill a little bit, maybe bumps up Chig, but certainly you're concerned about Treylon Burks. All right.
The most significant injury of the day was the Russell Gage injury. He is out for the season with a knee injury. The Jets and Bucks were having joint practices this week. They had one joint practice. He went down with a non-contact injury during Wednesday's session. It is official per NFL media that Russell Gage now will be out for the season, putting even more on the plate of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think this is more just a sad story than it is a fantasy impact story. I don't know that Russell Gage was going to be drafted that much except for deeper PPR leagues. Really nice player, had some moments, but given the struggles that we expect to happen on this Bucs offense, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask under center, we expect it to be a conservative offense. Todd Bowles wants to just play defense and run the ball. That's what he wants to do. That's what I'm hearing out of Tampa Bay this year. So yes, the fact is that Tampa Bay is not going to be a great offense, but for fantasy purposes, it's going to be very narrow. You want Evans, you want Godwin, you want Rachaad White, and you're in a deeper league, maybe you talk yourself into Cade Otton or something like that at tight end. But honestly, it's really those three guys, and that's it. And so really hate to see this Gage, who's really suffered some tough injuries here the last couple of years. Really nice player. Feel bad for him. Looking forward to seeing him back on the field next year.
Yep. And again, with the Bucs, their start to the season is absolutely brutal as well. I think the Bucs, they have some. No one thinks that they're going to be really good. I think they have the scope to be potentially the worst team in the league, honestly. If they have a couple more injuries, with how decimated their offensive line is, with the questions obviously at quarterback, they start the season at Minnesota, Chicago, Philadelphia, at New Orleans, Detroit, at Buffalo. These are brutal games, and there is a chance they start off 1-6, and it's the Kyle Trask show, and Evans and Godwin, maybe one of them gets traded. It could go south.
It does seem like, why wouldn't you not move, given that, it's a long way back, and so Evans and Godwin, who obviously do have value, why would you not try to move those guys and try to get some draft picks, some younger players, and try to rebuild? Because it's going to take a while for Tampa Bay to get back to where they wanted to be.
I bet a little 10-1 Bucs to have the worst record in the league. So sorry, Bucs fans, but I think that there is some. I think it could be the Kyle Trask.
And by the way, they're bringing back the creamsicles this year too.
Oh,
the creamsicle uniforms, I believe, will be.
Oh, yes.
They're coming back.
Classic.
Which one of the best uniforms in football, but also harkens back to their ineptitude, their days of ineptitude.
Bring it back.
Bring it back. The creamsicles there. I've Godwin at 30. I have Mike Evans at 33. I wasn't factoring in Russell Gage's production into either of those rankings. I think that's about right.
Our last bit of wide receiver news here is on Terrace Marshall. Panthers beat writer Sheena Quick said he's expected to be sidelined for a few weeks. Terrace Marshall is dealing with a back injury, so we'll see where that goes. But Barry, I think the bigger kind of movement here is that the guys in front of him, whether it's Adam Thielen, who's going to play a lot anyway, of course you have DJ Chark, and then the rookie Jonathan Mingo, it once again just kind of solidifies that they're going to be on the field a lot more.
Yeah, that's what it is. We didn't know exactly how much of a role Marshall would have, but we also didn't know that about Jonathan Mingo. I think we felt pretty good about Chark and Thielen getting a lot of reps, but really this just you never like to see an injury to a player, but feels like this gives more of a opportunity for Jonathan Mingo. It's a second-round pick. I'm curious where you are on Jonathan Mingo, because I know in the fantasy community, people are really split on him. There's some people that really like him, that think he should have gone higher, that think he's got a potential to be one of the top scoring fantasy rookies, because again, you've got Chark and Thielen, who are both dealt with injury issues over the course of their career. Mingo's young, and you're just sort of like, hey, do they try to focus him and Bryce Young and try to build that connection early on? And there are other people that I saw one tweet, and I forget who said this, so I apologize, but this was just basically, name a wide receiver that didn't lead his college in wide receiving production who was really good in the pros. You can't? Exactly. This is a Jonathan Mingo tweet. So I forget who said that tweet. It wasn't me, but I thought that was also interesting as well. Somebody that I respect tweeted that out. Where are you on Mingo?
He went a little earlier than I expected, just because he was a guy that didn't traditionally always line up on the outside and win that way. At Ole Miss, he was somebody that they would motion a lot. They'd almost use him as an H-back at times. There was a lot of scheme touches, and the production was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't like Tank Dell was a guy that had scheme touches at Houston and 200 targets, but it was amazing. Everything Tank Dell did was awesome. So with Mingo, do I think he could be a good NFL player down the road? Sure, but I would tame the rookie expectations. Their first-team offensive line couldn't block the Jets' backups in the preseason. So are we going to rely on a guy that is going to be the third wide receiver on his team with a rookie quarterback and a bad offensive line? How much are they going to throw the ball? that feels like a stretch for me where he wouldn't be a rookie wide receiver in this class that I have massive or fantasy impact as a rookie, I would say.
Yeah, I think Adam Thielen's going way too late in drafts, and I get that he's not very exciting at all, but he's going as wide receiver 52 at the moment. He finished last year wide receiver 30. He might be the number 1 wide receiver option on an NFL team. With Bryce Young, look, I don't think Bryce Young's going to be great, but Bryce Young should be enough to get Thielen, I don't know, you could Thielen to catch 80 passes and 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think that's in the range.
In a deeper PPR league, I have no problem with Adam Thielen. Look, he's had over 100 targets the last 3 years. But you're right. There's nothing exciting about Adam Thielen, and he feels more like a floor play than an upside play. When you're in late, people are going to want the Tank Dells of the world, right? They're going to want some of those guys. Like I was in a draft. This is crazy. Like I was in a draft recently where Donovan Peoples-Jones went ahead of him. You know what I mean? So it's just like people are all over the place. I'm just saying. By the way, that was a Lawrence Jackson tweet. Yeah, but I don't mind the Adam. Like I'm with you. Yep. No one. Adam Thielen is like Jacoby Myers. Like there's guys like that, just a boring player that no one when you're drafting is going to go ooh. Like when you draft. Trying to think of a good example, like when you draft Jordan Addison or whatever, right? Or Luke Musgrave. Like how I've been talking up Luke Musgrave's here for like 2 weeks. He's starting to get a lot of buzz on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, last couple of days because these training camp videos. He did a jet sweep yesterday. I was freaking out. So like he's somebody that like everyone's gonna be like ooh sleeper. No one's doing that when you draft Adam Thielen. But you're right, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, and
he's
70 receptions,
he's going
viable.
He's going the same range as like Rashad Bateman. Like I'd much rather have Adam Thielen than Rashad Bateman. I get the upside with Bateman,
that's
but
the point.
Thielen is he's just steady.
The anti-Adam Thielen argument here is that, like I'm to your point. Like I think he's going to have solid production, and there's value baked into his ADP given his skill set and the lack of target competition. The argument there is that there's virtually no chance that Adam Thielen is like a top 30 wide receiver this year, right? I mean, but Rashad Bateman, if he stays healthy and he becomes the number 1 for Lamar Jackson and what we expect to be a top 3 scoring offense, like Rashad Bateman could be that guy. Yep. He could also miss a bunch of games and once again be a fantasy disappointment. But like when you're drafting that low, in theory, you have your starters, you even probably have your backup. So when you're drafting in that range, you just want to swing for the fence, right? Yep. Because hopefully you hit a home run, and if it doesn't, then that's the guy you waive for the next hot waiver wire pickup. You don't need a 6 for 60 kind of guy. That's the argument.
Yep. No, I get that. Particularly late in drafts. I just think that Thielen, if you shouldn't be going outside the top wide receivers if you're the number 1 receiving option on your team and you have a potentially competent quarterback.
Fair. I'm with you. And with that, we will take our first break. When we're back, more wide receiver talk as we go through all of Barry's tiers for the upcoming season.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. Wide receiver tiers, starting with tier 1. No surprise who's at the top if you watched our mock draft, which you should from Wednesday's show. Justin Jefferson at number 1, Jamar Chase at number 2. Those are the first 2 picks in our draft. Number 3, Cooper Kupp. Number 4, Tyreek Hill.
My little Cooper Kupp there, but let's talk about Jamar Chase, who, in addition to being an absolutely animal as a fantasy football player, he is also a very wise and smart investor. Unbelievably skilled on the field and in the boardroom. Over 11 targets a game last year. When he's seen 7 or more targets, he averages over 21 fantasy points per game. This part is crazy. For his career, he averages 86 receiving yards a game. That's the 3rd highest in NFL history. He's my wide receiver 2. If you take him at wide receiver number 1, I mean, Jamar Chase is awesome.
Yep.
I love Jamar Chase.
I think the most
relevant. For many reasons.
Yeah, I know you do. I think the most relevant, it's not really a stat, but the most relevant thing about Jamar Chase, he was born in the year 2000. He's 23 years old, so he has more scope to actually get better and develop skills. As Matthew's staring off into the distance, feeling old that Jamar Chase was born in the 21st century. But guys like Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp, who are 30, I think we know what they are. They're not going to get better, but Chase could get better, and he'll also just get healthier. So he has huge scope to be the best player in fantasy this year.
Yeah, that's not without the realm of possibility. The other thing is that, again, we always talk about how important a quarterback is for a wide receiver's success, and obviously there's a massive connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, right? I mean, they went to college together, they play in the pros together. Some have even noticed that they invest together, that both guys, really smart investors. If you just sort of look at recent investments that either of those two guys have done, they've done them together. They've, they've both invested in some similar projects. So it's just the connection between those two are great. We love some Joe Burrow. We love some Jamar Chase.
We do.
Both of them, by the way, drink free forever here at the happy hour.
Indeed. And of those 4 receivers, I think there's consensus those are your top 4 wide receivers across the board. And if you just look at the quarterbacks and the situations for those 4, all right, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, we know what Kirk Cousins is, that's fine. Stafford, what's left of Stafford in that offensive line for Kupp. And then Tua Tagovailoa, who's got his own concerns for Tyreek Hill. And then Jamar Chase has just got Joe Burrow, who's going to be one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time, I
Jamar
suspect.
Chase has the best quarterback of any of these 4 guys, but all 4 of them finishing as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy is within the range of outcomes. Honestly, finishing as the best wide receiver in fantasy football history within the range of outcomes. One of the guys on the list has already done it. I mean, which is Cooper Kupp. Justin Jefferson had a monster season last year as well. We know the potential of Chase and Hill. I mean, again, where did Lawrence take Tyreek Hill yesterday? Was it a 2? 3?
3.
He took him at 3.
Our draft went
again,
Justin Jefferson, then I took Jamar Chase, and then Lawrence took Tyreek Hill, and McCaffrey went 4th.
Yeah, I mean,
So
can't argue with any of those.
PPR
guys.
format.
They're all going to just have huge years.
All right, let's take a look at Tier 2, which is kicked off by Stephon Diggs, followed by Barry's Ride or Die, who is okay, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lions training staff drinks free today. Davante Adams at number 7. CeeDee Lamb at 8. Followed off, close it out there with A.J. Brown. Before we get into some of the guys on the back end, Barry, I want to ask you, can Stephon Diggs kind of sneak into Tier 1? Is he that guy that's just on the outside looking in, or are these guys truly all grouped together?
No, I think, honestly, any one of these guys, except maybe A.J. Brown, any one of these guys could easily be a top 4 Tier 1 fantasy wide receiver. Again, we talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown earlier in the show in terms of the massive target share. If Stephon Diggs catches 3 or 4 more touchdowns, which, by the way, is completely possible given that he's playing with Josh Allen, he could certainly be there as well. Davante Adams has been a Tier 1 wide receiver. We've seen that from him recently, and certainly, given how bad we expect the Raiders to be, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a great quarterback, but he can get the ball to skilled players. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo support a number of very highly ranked fantasy relevant wide receivers over his career in San Francisco. So any of those guys, and honestly, my buddy Eights is CeeDee Lamb to you guys,
Yes.
but Eights, me and Eights are tight. Like, in terms of just pure skill, forgetting fantasy for a second, like, Connor, I don't know where you are, but I think CeeDee Lamb is as good as any of the people on that list from a pure skill standpoint as a wide receiver. So It's just a matter if that offense opens up and Dak can have that kind of year that we think it might be in him.
Absolutely, especially when they move him around. He could play inside, he could play outside. He's tremendous after the catch, and the target should be there. Sure, I think people get distracted by Brandon Cooks being there, Gallup a year removed further from injury, but Lamb is just so talented.
And the Mike McCarthyism, Mike McCarthy of it all.
I think that's the biggest issue.
The new McCarthyism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's another dark day in American history.
Yeah.
The
Previously associated
up,
with communism, now associated with just botching the clock at the end of games and bad decisions.
Which one's worse?
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Ask the fans in Dallas. I'll tell you which one they'll choose.
Well, I think the versatility with Lamb that you guys brought up, the fact that when they started at the end of last season, just throwing him in the slot, like running him deep from the slot, this is completely unfair. They just got no chance to defend him. And I think as well, Dak Prescott, I think, has a bit of a stench on him because he threw those 2 picks. He didn't play well against the Niners in that playoff game. 1, it was against the best defense in football. 2, it's 1 game. Dak Prescott is still, I think, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL on talent, and also just in terms of volume. He's going to be able to get CeeDee Lamb the ball. CeeDee Lamb's going to be absolutely fine.
The only guy I have on that list that I don't think could make Tier 1 is A.J. Brown, and it's only it's not that he doesn't have that talent. It's just a function of he's got so many talented weapons around him, and there's also, by the way, a run-first offense, a slow-paced offense that's going to have a really good defense. They're not going to get into shootouts very much, and you're not going to see a ton of possessions from the Eagles. Again, because they're not one of the higher-paced teams in terms of pace of play.
Yep. Just On Davante Adams, quickly, if you told me that Jimmy Garoppolo is fully healthy for the season, I would have Davante Adams third after Jefferson and Chase. But it's just because the risk of him going down, which feels like a 100% chance. It's not a 100% chance, but it feels like a 100% chance he's going to get hurt at some point. And then it's Brian Hoyer, who will still be able to feed Davante the ball, but it's not going to be the same.
And by the way, Adams is a little bit older than the rest of the guys on this list.
Injured at the moment.
He's already injured at the moment. Right. Exactly. So that's the other thing where, just a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, about Amon-Ra St. we've talked about him a ton on the show. Obviously, he's my fantasy ride or die. He's still my fantasy ride or die. Lions training staff drinks free. Like I've said this, since week 13 of 2021, he is the third best wide receiver in fantasy. The only players with more fantasy points at the wide receiver position since week 13 of 2021 are Justin Jefferson and Davante Adams. Amon-Ra St. Brown is an elite fantasy wide receiver, and no one thinks of him. He doesn't get talked about in the same breath as some of these guys, as the Diggs and the Lambs and the Davantes and the Cups of the world. And the fact is that production-wise, over an extended period of time, has been that way. And nothing that's going to happen this year makes you think that that's going away. In fact, no Hawkinson, Williams is going to miss the first 6 games. There's not a lot of target competition on a team that we think is going to be really good offensively. We like Jared Goff as a quarterback, and again, their schedule, 7 of the final 8 games played in a dome where Jared Goff has been lights out. Last year was unbelievable as a quarterback when he played under a roof.
His target competition is rookies. And
Josh Reynolds.
And Josh Reynolds, right? I mean, seriously, it's Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. Rookie tight ends historically do not command that much of a target share. So it's all there for Amon-Ra St. Brown to be the entire offense.
Yeah. Oldest wide receiver in the NFL, Marvin Jones. Yes. Has research confirmed that, by the way? Can someone confirm who the oldest wide receiver in the NFL is? But Marvin
Jimmy
Jones,
Graham doesn't count, by the way. He's still tight end.
he's
Yeah, doesn't worry about the franchise tag.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take a look at Tier 3. This group, really interesting because it's all players on the rise, right? You have the Offensive Rookie of the Year from last year, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, who has just been phenomenal for Miami, Chris Olave, who very well could have won the Offensive Rookie of the Year, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase's running mate, and then DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown's running mate. So the talent on this list here, Barry, is not only ascending, but absolutely tremendous on its own.
And you know what? All these guys, if you go running back, all these guys are viable wide receiver ones on your team. If you start off with running back, or you get you go Kelsey in the first and then a running back in the second. Again, it's not ideal, but Olave I think is going to be special. Wilson's going to be special. Waddle is a no-brainer. Higgins is there, of course. We've already talked about super investor Joe Burrow as his quarterback, but more importantly, DeVonta Smith I think becomes really interesting. Since week 2 last year, he was the 12th best wide receiver in fantasy. He was top 8 among wide receivers in both receptions and receiving yards over that stretch, and he had the exact same number of targets in that time frame from week 2 on as A.J. Brown. Again, A.J. Brown is the bigger name. He's the bigger wide receiver. But DeVonta Smith, coming out of college, because of his stature, Slim Reaper. He doesn't get the kind of, respect's not the right word, but he isn't thought of the way that some of these bigger wide receivers are. Maybe it's a similar problem to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But DeVonta Smith can play. He can flat out play. He's got a ridiculous quarterback as well. Look at these numbers here on your screen. Since week 2, over a 16-game season, week 1, week 2 on last year, both of them had a 27.7% target share. DeVonta Smith actually averaging one more reception per game, 9 less yards per game, 1 fantasy point less per game. Really similar numbers ultimately to A.J. Brown, and yet the difference in ADP between them doesn't reflect how close they are in production. DeVonta Smith is another year into that system. He's a really good player.
Yep, agreed. And the other thing too, A.J. Brown's not an injury-prone player, but 2020, 2021, he got hurt both those years, missed a few games. If that happens, then all of a sudden DeVonta Smith is going to be a top 10 wide receiver option.
Jay, looking just at how often the Eagles will be favored by a wide margin this year, is there any concern that they just don't need to constantly throw to A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, that they just kind of run to a lot of blowouts and they can, like Barry said, kind of a slow pace of play? Does that factor for them in fantasy?
No, I think it'll actually be more favorable to them this year, because we made the joke last year that the Eagles Eagles could make the Super Bowl. We're not going to be sure if they're any good because of their schedule just being so insanely easy. And they were in so many positive game scripts for running the ball last season. I think just by virtue of just playing harder teams, even if they are the best team in the NFC, I think they will need to throw more. And so I think DeVonta Smith can definitely benefit from that. Connor, on Garrett Wilson, what is his ceiling this year? Like, could he have is 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, best wide receiver in football? Is that possible?
I think where the hang-up is maybe the touchdowns. And I know Rodgers would lock on to Davante Adams in the end zone. And when you hear Rodgers talk, that's who he refers to with Garrett Wilson all the time. But the yardage is going to be massive. I mean, he had over 1,100 last year with the laughing carousel they had at quarterback. I think 1,400 is easy for him this year because the targets will be there. This has been the connection from OTAs to camp. Yesterday, Bucks practices. I mean, it's just all Rodgers to Garrett Wilson. So I think a massive season in store because of the targets and the talent.
I'm going to give you something that I don't have a stat for, but just this gut thing, and then we'll move on to Tier 4 very quickly. But Aaron Rodgers wants to have a great year in New York, right? I mean, for a variety of reasons. Obviously, he wants to win a Super Bowl. He made this whole thing. But there's also, there's a part of Aaron Rodgers where he's just he's got that chip in his shoulder. He reads the media reports and everything like that. So my point is he wants not only a great year, wins and losses, but he wants a great statistical year.
100%.
He would love to win the MVP again at age 40 with Nathaniel Hackett again in Jets uniform. And so what happens is you get in close, you get to that 5-yard line, and they're calling Breece Hall off tackle, and he does lick a little like one of these, and he checks out of it, and it's just like, hey, you're going to do that Davante Adams slant that we've seen so many times, like, hey, Garrett Wilson, just boom, boom, boom. It's going to be one-on-one, and then he's just going to hit Wilson. There's going to be 5, 7, who knows, maybe 10 gimme touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers at some point over the course of the year that he could have checked out of, but he just wants to sort of pad the stats.
100%.
And when he decides to do that, when he says, I'm going to just try to throw a touchdown pass here, it's going to Garrett Wilson. Yeah. That's the point.
Back end of last year, he did the same thing with Christian Watson, who emerged as the best wide receiver on that team. And he's like, all right, well, this is the guy who's the best. He's the guy I trust the most to be able to do something. It's just going to him.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into Tier 4. This is kicked off at number 15 overall by Keenan Allen, followed by DeAndre Hopkins. And then DK Metcalf here, guys. It's funny how much we've talked about all kinds of different wide receivers on this show, and we've basically never talked about DK Metcalf. Obviously, Tyler Lockett's been underrated in that offense. They used the first-round pick on Jackson Smith and Jigba, and somehow DK has become the forgotten man by hype, but still in the top 20 here, Barry.
No player had more end zone targets last year than DK Metcalf. In fact, 3 of the 4 years he's played in the NFL, he's been top 3 in end zone targets. He's always a threat to score. Over 5 receptions per game last year, which was a career high. Geno back under center. We think that's a good one. We think that's good for DK Metcalf and his 25% target share from last year. 3 straight seasons with over 24% target share. Yes, they add JSN, but Metcalf is just because he's got so much of a propensity to score, is always kind of got a floor there for DK Metcalf, who, he's just like this physical freak. You know what I mean? He's the first guy to come out of college where I saw him without a shirt and I said, holy crap, that's me. That's like, wow, I have yet to see a guy that looks exactly like me without a shirt off. And finally, when DK Metcalf, when that viral photo went around, I'm like, my wife literally said, like, holy crap, that's you. And I'm like, I know.
We had the same thing on Radio Row with Derrick Henry.
Yes.
Yeah, you couldn't tell them apart.
Couldn't tell us apart. 1,000%. A lot of people are like, why do you wear baggy shirts? And it's like, not to intimidate Jay and Connor. That's why.
Which we appriciate around here.
Yeah,
that's what Manny Ramirez used to do.
DK Metcalf. I think one thing with DK that's an interesting thing to talk about outside of his physique resembling Matthew Berry's is that when we project concerns about target share or carries when there is a rookie coming in, I think that's a little fraught with peril. It's the same thing where everyone's expecting Tank Bigsby to cut into Travis Etienne. It's like, well, he hasn't taken a snap in the NFL yet, so let's just see it before it happens. It's the same thing. Like, I don't think Jackson Smith and Jigba is just going to render DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett irrelevant. Like, I need to see it a little bit. I'm sure he's going to get run, but DK is still clearly the guy you want.
Yeah, by the way, it's always one of those push-pull things. Until you see it, you don't know. But the truth is like, you can make the argument like, hey, he's going to see less targets because JSN's there, but he's also going to see less double teams, right? I mean, like it's all a balance, and so we'll wait to see. But we know he's insanely talented, and he's going to get a lot of targets, especially in close. DK Metcalf, we like quite a bit.
Back to Tier 4. This is a beefy group here. After DK Metcalf, 18 Deebo Samuel, 19 Calvin Ridley coming off the lost year due to suspension, 20 Amari Cooper, 21 Jerry Jeudy, followed by Terry McLaurin on Barry's
go.
Commanders. Mike Williams, there's rumors he's been in the slot a little bit for the Chargers this summer. Christian Kirk for
Slot
Jacksonville. DJ Moore at 25. We saw what he could do with Justin Fields already taking that screen to the house.
2 Jaguars on the list, 2 Chargers on the list. Amari Cooper is sort of interesting because the reports out of Browns camp have been Watson has been inconsistent. So we just don't know, are we going to get Houston Deshaun Watson, or are we going to get, 5 games from last year Deshaun Watson? Because he was not good last year. If there is one positive, that last year, even though Watson did not look like the guy we remembered, he still had a 25% target share. Like when Watson was out there, he was looking for Amari Cooper. We do expect them to be more pass heavy this year. Cooper comes in at number 20 for me in the wide receiver ranks. He had the 3rd most end zone targets last year. I mean, they did, whether it was Jacoby Brissett or Deshaun Watson. He was a big part of that offense. He is the number 1 wide receiver on what we expect to be a better than average offense. The question is Watson.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't really get the credit, Amari Cooper. I think it's because there's this perception he's this hired gun because he's jumped around and this is his 3rd team. But, I mean, the guy's insanely talented and he just produces, and he doesn't have a ton of target competition on that team.
The weird thing is there is, at least last year, there were significant home road splits. And that's been something that has sort of dogged him a little bit throughout his career, where whether it was with the Raiders, whether it was with the Cowboys, like he was always better at home than he was on the road for whatever reason.
Yep, loves sleeping in his own bed.
I guess
just like
so.
Connor Rogers.
Yeah.
Just
so,
like
absolutely.
Connor Rogers.
Tier 5 kicked off by Drake London. 27 is Marquise Hollywood Brown. And then, Jay, somebody you brought up earlier before, 28, Christian Watson in Green Bay, although he's playing with a different quarterback now in Jordan Love. Do you think that success continues for him?
I think it does. I think the talent is just real. As someone who was cheering against Christian Watson every week last year because I didn't have an Offensive Rookie of the Year ticket on him and it looked like he was coming. He was insane down the end of the season. He was playing like one of the best wide receivers in football. Just the ability to add in with the rushing as well, the jet sweeps that they would run. He was an end zone threat. He was a threat to break a 50-yard screen pass. I think the talent there is crazy. And Jordan Love, I mean, reports have been relatively good about Jordan Love in a way they perhaps haven't been about Deshaun Watson. So, yeah, I think Christian Watson, he is one of the guys in these lower tiers who you could absolutely see ending as a top 15 wide receiver in fantasy if a few things break right.
I might be a little bit too low on Brandon Aiyuk, who's my current wide receiver 32. Week 6 on last year in 12 games. He was a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. You think about they're a little bit more gadgety with Deebo Samuel. Obviously, you got McCaffrey there. Like, there's an argument to be made that Brandon Aiyuk finishes the year as the number 1 wide receiver in San Francisco, not Deebo Samuel. From a pure wide receiver standpoint, again, they're going to use the jet sweeps with Deebo and kind of the run heavy stuff. But Aiyuk is somebody that I think is really interesting. 75 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns last year. He was one of 11 wide receivers that could say that. Like, Aiyuk is somebody that coming out of college, everyone was like, ooh, Aiyuk in a Shanahan offense? I think I'm too low on Brandon Aiyuk, honestly. I think he's going to move up a little bit when my rankings updates come out.
Tier 6 kicks off with the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba, who will fit in Seattle's offense with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf at 36. Another rookie, Jordan Addison, a stack there of first-round rookies. And 37, Gabe Davis of the Bills, somebody who had an inconsistent year last year, Barry, but after the season we found out dealing with that ankle injury for a long time. A lot going on there.
High ankle sprain. Like last year, it was incredibly frustrating. He was very up and down. He was dealing with a high ankle sprain. A lot of stuff went wrong, and yet he was still like a mid-30s wide receiver last year. I believe he was wide receiver 36 last year, which when you think about everything that went wrong, not help, much more hurt than I think we knew at the time. And some tough flukiness with the touchdowns. But think about this. Again, after Stephon Diggs, there's no one on the Bills, which we think is going to be one of the best offenses in football and has obviously one of the best quarterbacks. There's no one on the Bills that demands targets. We think Dalton Kincaid can get some. Like, we think, Dawson Knox is still there. Like, we'll see who else. But honestly, it's going to be Stephon Diggs, and it's going to be Gabe Davis on the outside. James Cook, obviously, the running back. And so, there's a top 20 season potential in Gabe Davis if fully healthy, puts it all together. Still a very young player. Remember, last year, 47% of his targets came on deep passes. He led all players in average depth of target as well. This is a quote from Josh Allen. Said the Bills need to put Davis in better situations this year, especially the team should put Davis into more catch-and-run situations rather than strictly using him as a boundary and downfield pass catcher, which is what he did. They gave him a ton. just like if you don't come down with this 40-yard bomb, like you're not doing anything. They're going to use his skill sets more. So I can't quit Gabe Davis, Jay Croucher. I can't quit him.
Last year, Gabe Davis was going as wide receiver 25 in drafts. This year, he's going wide receiver 41. To me, that's too much. That's too much of a drop given the injury last year. What do you think of Jahan Dotson, Matthew?
Thank you for asking while I was taking a sip of something. Final 5 games last year, over basically 24% target share. He was wide receiver 17 over that stretch. He led the team with 8 end zone targets. Just from a talent standpoint, I love this kid. I think he's just a baller. Like, I don't have a stat for that, but just I watch this guy and I'm just like, he doesn't play to his size. He's just an absolute baller. He can win one-on-one matchups. He can win 50-50 balls. I know I like Sam Howell. Again, I'm a homer, but like I do think Jahan Dotson is really talented. He was productive last year in limited sense, and I think Bieniemy will use him quite a lot more this year.
Our final tier 7 here, Tyler Boyd at 49, Zay Jones at 50, Rashad Bateman at 51. We talked about his upside earlier. Kadarius Toney, who's unfortunately not healthy again, there at 52. Juju Smith-Schuster, expected to be the number 1 target in New England, there at 53. Rondale Moore at 54. Alan Lazard now with the Jets at 55. Nico Collins of the Texans at 56. KJ Osborne with Minnesota at 57. Romeo Doubs in Green Bay at 58. 59, DJ Chark Jr. in a Carolina offense that needs to get the targets going somewhere. And 60, Darnell Mooney for the Chicago Bears.
This is where you take your flyers, your Nico Collins, your Darnell Mooney's, your Kadarius Toney's of the world, even Rashad Bateman. This is where I want to take a flyer of somebody that could pop. And then Zay Flowers, we just don't know. I mean, with Zay Flowers and Donovan Peoples-Jones, like I think you have no wide receiver depth. Donovan Peoples-Jones is,
It's my last pick.
I understand. I'm just saying, he's got.
My man had.
He might have more names than fantasy points.
My man had 800
More names than
receiving
touchdowns
yards.
for sure.
Get the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Go to NBCSports.com/draft guide and use promo code BERRY20 for 20% off at checkout.
Connor 5 or J10 also work as promo codes if you would like to pay less money. Answer the question, who are the oldest wide receiver in the NFL? Matthew Slater's 37, much more of a special teams guy. Does qualify wide receiver. Not really. But Cole Beasley is 34, Marvin Jones 33. So Cole Beasley is the answer to the oldest wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I feel Lawrence was almost going to draft him, but ended up going DPJ. Really got the flamethrower out on Lawrence's team. It's good to see.
Yeah.
Really
We didn't know if he still had it. People were wondering around the office.
No.
And,
I can bring the heat there, no question about it. But yeah, Cole Beasley at 34 years, but he also retired too. He came back.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a while last year where Marvin Jones was the oldest wide receiver.
Couple
in the
loopholes
NFL.
in there.
Couple
a special
loopholes.
teamer that has to be a wide receiver on the depth chart.
Yeah.
Somebody who is kind of still in the league, but not really.
Yeah. Exactly right.
And then Marvin Jones, the oldest actual wide receiver in the NFL.
Right. By the way, not on this list is Sterling Shepard. It just seems like he's been in the league forever. Right?
Also not on the list is Michael Thomas, who I think most people think is 35 years old, but is only 30. Spring chicken, ready for a big bounce-back season. MT.
We wouldn't be happy hour without a Michael Thomas.
I don't know how I've staked myself to Michael Thomas.
All right.
But,
it is closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Enter our sweepstakes. Come visit us. Buy a draft guide. I don't know.
Enter the $5,000 league.
Yeah.
It's Matthew Berry's money.
Yeah, somebody in marketing $75,000. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.